Hi everyone, and welcome. Today we're featuring someone who has built a career from you make me laugh around helping people find not just houses but homes. Cece Blase and the SF Real Estate Buzz team are known for bringing meaning, financial security, and even a bit of fun with their clients' lives. And I can attest to that. You are so much fun, girl. With over 3 decades in San Francisco real estate, Cece's journey from her first flat in NOPA to leading a respected, integrity-driven team is both inspiring and full of practical wisdom. If you're an agent who values honesty, growth, and truly serving your client's best interests, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in and learn from one of the best.
So aren't you adorable? Okay, go.
My dear friend Cece. Yay! So thank you so much for being here.
No problem. I adore you. Yeah, that
Well, you know, we have these love fests going on.
we do.
There's a lot of that going on. But I wanted to ask you, so you've been in real estate since 1986. That's a good run, I gotta say, because I got my license in 87.
All right.
So you got to be
I got more zeros.
right. You do, sure. And so I'm curious, what drew you to this career and what keeps you here so long?
My mother decided that I was going to do this for a living. Shortly after I graduated from college, I was kind of bouncing around. I couldn't figure it out. And she was seeing her fellow moms with adult kids. And I think she used to say, they're tearing up the turf. And so she said that I needed to do this and that she thought I'd be good at it. And then she even figured out what real estate school I was going to go to, how soon I needed to take the test so I wouldn't have to do the extra 40 hours. Like, she had the whole thing set up.
Wow.
And this was back in, like, remember when we used to go to Anthony's?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I did my time at Anthony's this year. I didn't even have a car when I started. Yep.
But tell me, so what, made you stay so long? Because you didn't know what you were getting into, but.
No, I loved selling in San Francisco. I don't think I'd sell anywhere else. I say that it's like selling pieces of jewelry and history. And I became passionate about the city shortly after I moved here after college in like 1985.
Did you move from?
Well, I grew up down in the peninsula in Portola Valley, but I went back east to school, and I thought I would always stay back east because I didn't particularly like growing up in like the burbs. Urban settings just make me much happier. So I moved back east. I hung around in Boston for a while, and then I transitioned over to the Bay Area or back to San Francisco. And I fell in love with the city like we all do when we arrive, and really was fascinated by what I now recognize as urbanism. So how cities are locked together by neighborhoods, the architecture, the different kinds of ways that you can live in San Francisco, which can be dependent on the style of home that you choose to live in. So that interested me, and I always wanted to know what was going on behind those front doors. And, how people live, what they're like. And it just fit all of those bits and pieces of my passion and curiosity. And I remember my first day at work, it felt like I was tasting a food that I'd been craving my whole life but didn't know it. It was just like, this is amazing.
Wasn't the excitement of just knowing what's behind that door?
I think that was a lot of it.
Yeah. And to this day, still, right?
Yeah, but
It keeps you coming back?
Well, and there was also this automatic sense of community in the office that I was in. It was a very small, intimate office. It was on Haight Street. It specialized in residential income in the Haight-Ashbury Western Addition. And our very first day, my very first day, we had our sales meeting. And after our sales meeting, we went on a caravan.
Yeah, well, we still do that.
Do you really?
Absolutely.
Oh,
at a great lead.
So, we all got into a car, we went around and we looked at these different properties, and I learned so much. I think one of the first properties we saw, we went down underneath in the basement, and my broker pointed out what powder post beetles were, and he goes, poking at the post, all that dust comes out, and and so I started to learn about construction, and I love being on a learning curve.
Right.
And another one of your questions is why I stay in the business.
Right.
And there is always something to learn.
It's true.
Which is amazing. You'd think that after you'd been around long enough,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be something new. But I love a thorny problem. Like, give me like one of those problems that I've never had, where I get to learn something.
Yeah.
And that keeps me really interested and excited.
Yeah, and you know, it's not just construction, because we're dealing with people's lives and we're negotiating, and there's a lot to learn there, like dealing with different types of clients, right? So let's talk a little bit about that. So of course, have you ever fired a client?
Of course.
Yeah. And because why?
They're not fun.
They're not fun.
Yeah, my operative word. No, seriously, if I can't get up and look forward to who I'm working with and for,
Right.
I won't do it anymore.
Right.
I like to say that I curate my clients. So yes, I fire clients, or I certainly don't chase them down if they're not.
Exactly.
No, if they're not enthused and if they're not enthused and engaged, I'm not going to waste my time.
And so, negotiating, there's lots of different, skill sets there to learn. So I'm sure you've had your fair share of those. And I wonder, like, is there any kind of particular style that you have when it comes to negotiations? Like,
Actually, I did one of those little videos on negotiations, and I had like 3 tips, because we actually, back in the day, we used to train in negotiation. There
we
isn't the
still
same.
do here. We do all this here.
All right.
I just say, but
Okay,
because
okay.
so negotiate is like closing techniques. They're sales techniques, but
Yeah.
you need to know
Yeah.
how to talk to people
Yeah.
and get to the end result.
Yeah. Well, and so I'll give you communication tips, which might tie into the idea of negotiating. So listen more than you talk. Ask questions.
Love that.
If you're talking more than 50% of the time in a conversation, you're not doing your job. Silence is golden. And I've often found that if I just keep my mouth shut, I can wind up with a better than expected result. And by way of example, we were working once with multiple offers. I had an agent call. She was so anxious to get this property. And I just kept my mouth shut when she kept saying, what will it take? What will it take? What will it take? And I didn't say. And then she said, will X work? It blew our minds.
Great.
And my response was,
Far better than your expectations.
oh my gosh. Well, and then what you have to say,
negotiation.
yeah, but then what you have to say is, I think so. But that's good, because then the agent goes back to the buyer, and the buyer is satisfied, and it's all
Well, you're working for the seller in this case, and that's the deal. I mean, we've all been there, and that's a great piece of information. God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason.
Yep.
Twice as much listening okay. So tell me, how do you stay motivated, over all these decades? You and I, we can say it's been 4 decades. We're starting almost our 4th decade.
Yeah.
And so how do you stay motivated as keeping it fresh, keeping it new?
The problem solving. Agent relationships, actually. I really love the agents.
Yeah.
I think this industry attracts a certain breed. And so I can't think of what the word is, but there's a connection that I feel with other professionals. I almost think of it like we're a tribe. We have the same language. We have the same lifestyle. We have the same customs. We have the same goals. So,
Love that.
yeah. And I think particularly to San Francisco, it's like, and other agents, I would go ahead and say I'm most familiar with Bay Area agents. So that keeps me motivated. Those thorny problems keep me motivated. And the other thing that keeps me engaged in the business now is, after so long, I now have a partner that helps me with the listings and a partner that helps me with the buyers. And they do what I'll call the heavy lifting. And then I'm there to help navigate or be sort of the overarching manager. And then I actually learned this from an agent he's a really good agent. And he tells his clients up front who they're going to be working with, what their expectations should be, and that he is in the background the whole time watching what's going on, which I am. I'm watching every email. I know the appointments. I know the problems. I'm there to step in when there's an issue because, frankly, my body of experience allows me to address the problems that might come up that other agents can't handle.
That's right, because they're learning and they're new and they haven't encountered that one yet.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
Or maybe it's something I've never encountered. Yeah. And so it's something we get to figure out.
We get to talk and that's really good. I think, like the community of realtors coming together and myself, it's always been one of the real wonderful pieces of. I remember coming back on tour after I left San Francisco for a decade. And the first broker's tour I went on, you were sitting there and you like greeted me with open arms and like, oh my God, I haven't seen you in so long. It's just like we built these relationships over all these years. It's very important.
Yeah.
They're important also for the negotiations. So let's go talk about that.
Yes.
You have multiple offers.
Yes.
You know, you're Cece Blase and I've got, Joe, someone over here and Mary someone over there, and I don't know either one. How do you think that
Right, right. So no, the agent relationships are critical. And actually, I'll flip over to the other side. When we've worked with buyers, our last 2 deals with Gary Snow, we had buyers very competitive, 5 or 6 offers. Both times we were not the best offer. But a lot of it has to do with establishing the relationship from the beginning when the agent is putting the property on the market. So if you talk to them, they get to know you, you almost over communicate with them during the whole process so they know how to distinguish you from the other agents that might be putting forth offers. And I found that makes a difference. And then also a certain level of expertise. Our last deal, we were not the highest, but we figured out at the last minute that the house had no heat. And that might make it difficult for a lender.
Absolutely.
And we had an out-of-area agent who didn't have a lot of experience and recognized that we were going to be the right agents to work with. And we made it clear to him that we were going to know how to navigate that deal.
Hit it close.
Yep. And that gave him a lot of confidence. And it made him, and so he chose us over somebody that had come in higher.
Yeah, and that happens all the time. People think it's all about the money, but it's not. It's really about the skill and the expertise. Sometimes you just get the transaction yellows. So let's talk about income property. You mentioned that you worked at, a company that specialized in that, and I know you did a lot of investing and that helped a lot of clients. So, what is your specialty in that, and how do you help people? One, to trust you, and then also to know how to invest.
Yeah, so I would say when I work with residential income property these days, it's more smaller buildings. So it might be 2-unit building, 3-unit building, occasionally a TIC that might be in a multi-unit building, which is its own little animal that you have to explain. And that conversation when somebody comes and says, I'm considering a 2-unit building, I've got a buddy, he's going to buy with me, it's going to be awesome.
So we get you right.
But no, I mean, it's like the little red flags come up, right? Because when they talk about that, they just think it's going to be so great. And
We hate to burst their bubble.
it's awful, I know. But rent control is a huge factor in that. And that's the first thing I like to say to my clients. And there's bad stories on the buildings that you might see online that look like bargains, but then you find out you've got the kind of tenants that are going to be very, very difficult or challenging or low income. And so I make sure that they understand that rent control is going to have perhaps an impact on them. And then I explain how if they have the grit and the determination and the willingness, and if they're prepared to take on a certain level of risk and or be very, very patient, these can be exceptional values. And so if, again, we talked about this before we started filming, if you hang around long enough with any investment that you make, you're bound to come out looking brilliant.
Right.
And now, no, it's really true. Hang on long enough and you'll look really, really smart. You might look stupid at the beginning, and I've had a knack for that with my own purchases, but I've ultimately come out looking really smart.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Well, let's move it around. I know that you write, and you write very well and very entertaining. So, do you use that in your social media? How does your writing and your marketing all come together? Because your SF Buzz, I've been on your list somehow for many years. I know I sort of, shouldn't be because
No, it's fine.
but I love reading them. They're so entertaining. Yeah, so fun. So tell me how that plays into your marketing and your business plan.
I only work with people I like, and I only want people that like
I know you used to start it with "Hello, my favorite people." Just do that. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah, and usually, I mean, the people that are on there have either called me or spoken to me, and Jeff, thank you so much. So I write the way that I talk. So there's a match So sometimes when people meet me, they recognize that how I'm communicating is exactly the way that I write. So it's got a very casual, loose style. And then my social media tends to match the way that I write. And I've actually been shifting over to social media because frankly, it's easier. It takes less time.
Right.
The writing is a labor of love. And I probably spend too much time on it because I enjoy it so much. And so, although by now I've got this, I think I've been doing this for 20 years. I've got this library of material that I can actually go back and I can use what's called evergreen content, which is content that doesn't have to be, I think the word would be contemporaneous to the period. Doesn't have to be about the current market. It can be, here's negotiation strategies, here's this, here's that, because there's certain things that will remain constant no matter how long we've been in the business. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, so you shifted more to social media, and I know you were talking about podcasts even.
Yeah.
So does that generate business, or is it for you?
No, it generates business. One of my practices over the years is to go back and study where my business comes from and then check, like just drill it down. Like, okay, I got this client. Well, this client was referred by this person. Well, how do I know this person? Well, how does this person keep, and then really just keep track of me. So by way of example, I found that I was getting referrals and all of these referrals were coming from people who were on my Facebook. And that helped me realize that I needed to go deep on my Facebook. And, there's different trainers out there. And there was a trainer that said, we've got to start using our personal pages for our business and go ahead and kind of scatter in this stuff just about us, but then throw in the professional stuff and then stuff about us. And there's a pretty close marriage for me between who I am personally and the way that I present myself professionally. You're not going to see a big change.
Right. And I think that's important. I think initially people would say, oh, we shouldn't, put our personal lives in our business and segregate them. And I don't think that's accurate. Because when we meet people and we talk to them and we're dealing with their personal lives and, they want to know that they can trust us.
Right.
They have to build trust. So
Right.
if they see more about you, they trust you more.
Right.
Do you think that?
Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But then I also think back to that first meeting or that connection that you have. It's about asking those questions and shutting up and listening. And I know back when I was first starting, I felt like I had to talk
Right.
to demonstrate my expertise, to make it seem like I was really smart. But now I've learned that listening, the tea leaves there is one now.
That's right.
Yeah.
It helps. It helps to remember. Great. Well, I love that. So let's shift again now, talking about a volatile market, an uncertain market conditions. We're in an uncertain market,
Yes.
right? I mean, most of the top producers I've been talking to over the past 4 or 5 months
Yeah.
are like, yeah, it's pretty rough out there. What are you experiencing?
I always talk about how I'm experiencing things in my own little bubble. And so right now we have a listing coming up in the Bayview. We have an escrow in the Mission District, and then we'll have a listing coming up in Bernal Heights. And all of these are previous clients. So I'm blessed to have what they'll call a book of past clients who know me and trust me, and they reach out to me when the moment comes for them to make a change.
So we keep in touch with those people. I'm going to interrupt you because I want to just share that piece. So how you have this book of business and how do you keep in touch? Is it just your social media? And just it. I think a lot of your letters are writing.
A little bit of it is the letter writing.
Do you do phone calls to them?
No, I'm brilliant cards.
When we were in the height of our career, we were doing it all.
Yes.
And in those days, a lot of us didn't even know assistants. They didn't have assistants. We had to do everything.
Yeah.
We had to handwrite contracts. I mean, we're going to the dark days. Let's not go there. But we did, we didn't have help. So
No.
today you have that support
Yes.
team, which is very beneficial.
Yes.
Just allow us to read a book in the middle of the day. Whereas we never would think of such a thing in the past.
Right.
We'd be working 12 hours a day.
Right.
People think we were a glamorous life, but we worked many, many long days. Well, I kind of interrupted you there, but I wanted to get that piece in because I think it's important for people you know, one, when you're new, you have to do everything. You have to do all those little things. But as your career advances, you're working on referral only. People are calling you up because they see you on social. Oh, Cece, I love her. I have a real estate question. You know,
Right.
More like that.
Right.
Yeah. And then tell me what you think about the future of our business. Like this is a good question. Like the industry is evolving, and you know, I don't know if you're preparing for it or planning for it, but we kind of live in the moments. You know, I think it's better. But what do you think about the future of the real estate industry? It's been, you know,
I don't know if you remember when everybody thought that Redfin and Zillow were evil.
Yeah.
They were gonna take away all of our business.
Right.
And the net is that they've actually made our business a little easier. Because
technology in general.
yes, technology has. I was at a seminar once years ago, and everybody, the people that were running it said that Microsoft was going to eat us alive. It was just stuff. And I think that sometimes people feed on fear, and that just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. And I was actually really kind of excited about the NAR settlement. And part of it is because I just like to see how the industry changes over time. And I think that the settlement gives us an opportunity to demonstrate our worth and show how we add value. And I think I'm finding that agents are preferring working with buyer agreements now. I certainly do.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're a blessing.
Oh my God.
I mean, when they came out, we started having buyer broker agreements probably 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I wasn't used to them.
Late 90s.
No,
Excusing it.
Yeah, I should say. And, you know, it wasn't mandatory, but it's a blessing because you're guaranteed to get paid now when someone's committed to you.
Right.
Instead of you running around willy-nilly,
Right.
you know,
Right.
it's a benefit.
Well, and also I think before that's signed, I think the buyer needs to see what value you add to them.
Right.
Right. So, that experience of that first interview or that first conversation where you're asking more than listening, you're listening more than asking, and you're sort of sharing the arc of what the experience might be and gaining that trust. And then at the end, you let them know that you're going to need to have them sign this before we can start digging in and talking about our properties.
Right. Exactly. It's just, I think it's been a very positive change. So, okay. Last question. What's changing in the real estate world right now that agents need to pay attention to? What do you think?
Changing now that agents need to pay attention to.
Besides the
The buyer
broker agreement.
buyer broker agreements.
Do you see changes on the horizon?
I'm not very, where are you leading with that? Tell me what you see. What changes do you see, Holly? You must see.
Well, I'm not answering. Well, but you have a different perspective. I mean, I do see the industry changing with technology. I do see people, it's so funny because it changes, but it shouldn't. We do the basics still here.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So going back to caravanning,
Yeah.
office meetings, of talking about every sale and every transaction, and how much did that go over asking, and what kind of buyer profile did you have? I think is invaluable.
I do too.
And I think that has changed a lot since the pandemic. And I think it's, that people should come back to that. This is a people business.
Go old school again.
Old school. It's a people business. When you started and I started and I had, my broker, we would meet and they would teach us and train us and tell us everything, what to do. You need some help when you're new in this business. And you need help as you grow. Those first 10 years. I mean, I say anybody under, 10 years is still fairly much an patient.
Yeah.
And so it takes time to learn a lot. And so, I don't know. I mean, I think that what I see changing is that there's less of that. There's people that don't know what they're doing because of that. Yeah, you see it.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And so, this is where the Redfins and I'm in a transaction with a young lady now, bless her heart, nice lady. And I said, have you ever done this? Well, not really. Well, let me walk you through it. So I want to get the transaction done.
Oh my God. And then you're doing their job as well as yours.
It doesn't matter.
I go.
But this is what's out there.
Yeah.
That's the misnomer of the technology.
Yeah.
I think you can look at everything online
Yeah.
and know the floor plan and know that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's my dream.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think maybe one thing that, although this is change is constant, maybe in this way, is that I'm always hearing or listening to people talk about different business models. So, discount brokerages, or you're going to list with me and I'm only going to charge you, I've heard this, I'm only going to charge you 1%, but oh, by the way, if you want to sign, it's going to be another $500. And oh, by the way, if you want professional profits on your, this a la carte thing. But then I've also heard people talk about business models where there will be a rebate guaranteed if you find something after, your first 5 showings. I will go ahead and give you something back because you've made it less labor intensive.
Yeah.
Well, and in the aftermath of the NAR settlement, everybody thought that commissions were going to start to get significantly negotiated, and the concessions, all of that, people, the Department of Justice has certainly believed that there were going to be significant changes in how we were doing business. I don't know that that's not necessarily true, but I'm not seeing anywhere near the impact of what people who aren't in our business thought was going to happen. And
when you're new and young, you don't know, you're a little insecure. And so, but it's a good piece of advice, because I've hired many agents that have come into real estate from other careers, and I'm sure you didn't start your life in real estate. Well, maybe you did. That's right, you did say that. But most people don't, and they come in and they have some other life experience. But they're not unexperienced in life, is what I like to say.
Right.
Just unexperienced in real estate.
Right.
So you have to lean on that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's really great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming in, and
all right,
it's just time with you because I love you.
I know. I got you.
Realtor. So thanks.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.